Hello, students, and welcome to class. Today we are in I believe this is the holy city of Varanasi, and we are at the Ganges River. Many Hindus believe that the Ganges is actually a sacred goddess that's flowing here on earth. Well, that's going to be the topic of this lecture, the goddesses of India. Let's take a look. All right, last class we had talked about, we started looking at the Puranas and we looked at the Trimurti. And remember, according to Hinduism, the universe goes in cycles. We have a cycle of creation that the god Brahma is in charge of. We have a lifespan of the universe, and during this lifespan, it's the Hindu god Vishnu who is the preserver and protector. And if there's a threat to the universe, Vishnu comes down and will take on different forms. And we call these manifestations an avatar. We have Shiva, who at the end of a cosmic cycle will be in charge of its destruction. We'll look at Shiva next lecture because Shiva is a very complicated god. So the next lecture I post will be on the god Shiva. Also, we have in the Puranas are many, many, many goddesses. All right, so when we think of Hinduism today, it's often seen as this broad umbrella term under which we have three kind of main categories or three main deities which are often worshipped. We have Vishnu, and we call the followers of Vishnu Vaishnavites. We have Shiva, we call the followers of Shiva the Shaivites. And then we have the goddess called Devi, sometimes Mahadevi. Maha means great, so the great goddess. And her followers are called the Shakta. All right, let's take a look at our goddesses. So the origin of the goddesses lies in rivers, and we talked about, and this is the ancient Indus River, and a figurine from the Indus Valley civilization thought perhaps to represent the river. Most major rivers throughout the Indian subcontinent have been associated with goddesses because rivers bring life. They're associated with fertility. All right, in terms of the origins of the goddess, when we look at the early Vedas, we don't have very many mentions of the goddess. Scholars think that the goddesses of Hinduism were rather indigenous traditions. They were not part of the Indo-Aryan religious landscape. Different tribes and tribal groups had their own respective goddess. Each village often had their own goddess, sometimes associated with small bodies of water like a pond, sometimes associated with trees or plants. Often the goddesses in the early history didn't have a form. They were aniconic, worshipped in the form of stones, in the form of rivers, in the form of trees. And there's just many, many goddesses when we look at Hinduism. There are countless goddesses. Yet later when we get a set of holy scriptures called the Puranas, many of these goddesses will be viewed as manifestations of one ultimate goddess. And this one ultimate goddess called Mahadevi is then spread throughout South Asia by priests, by Brahmins, who will preach that all goddesses are ultimately one, and thereby they bring these outside groups under the structure of Brahmanism, the order of the Brahmin priests. So Mahadevi is a belief that evolves over time in Hinduism this one universal goddess, and all the different goddesses are simply aspects of this one goddess. All the goddesses are one. The Mahadevi has both a formless aspect that's called Nirguna, that's the ultimate goddess, the goddess as in fact equivalent to Brahman, the essence of the universe. And then Saguna, Saguna is with form, so any of the images or depictions we see of the goddesses will be an example of Saguna. And the goddess is viewed in terms of Brahman, the ultimate essence of the universe, by her followers. The energy of the universe, and this will be an important term to know, Shakti. This means energy or power. The energy or power that animates, that brings us and the universe to life, is viewed as feminine. So Shakti is a feminine power, a feminine energy that gives rise to everything. For the followers of the goddess, this is also the power of the gods, comes from this feminine energy, their Shakti. So Shaktis are followers of the goddess, followers of Shakti. And Shakti again is power personified as the goddess. So this ultimate feminine energy that pervades the universe sometimes takes on form, the form of different goddesses. This is essentially a female principle and the power of the gods. So the power, the lifeblood behind everything is something that is feminine. It's a feminine power that we call Shakti. And it's said that even ultimately for the followers of the goddess, those we call Shakta, the gods are like, the male gods are like puppets on the string. They're ultimately controlled by the goddesses. The gods have no power without their goddesses. This power of the Shakti, can take two forms. It can take a creative aspect, so there's a creative, life-giving side to the Shakti, inspiring side as well, and then a destructive, a warlike power. That's the other side of this feminine energy. So all the goddesses of India, or the goddesses of Hinduism, can be divided into two aspects: goddesses that are maternal and goddesses that are more martial or more warlike. So the two aspects. Let's take a look here. So which one of these looks more maternal and which one of these looks more martial or warlike? Well, this is the more maternal image. This is Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. And this is the more warlike manifestation of Kali. Here we have Parvati. This is a more maternal goddess, and this is her son Ganesh. So Parvati is she who is of the mountains. So this is said to be a goddess of the mountain people and domesticates Shiva. We're going to learn about Shiva next lecture. The goddess is Parvati is the wife of Shiva, the consort of Shiva. Sati, some may have heard this tradition of, in the past, in very certain communities, widows would sometimes set themselves on fire and be cremated alongside their husbands. That practice has long been outlawed throughout India. Well, this goes back to an ancient story where Parvati, in the form of Sati, will set herself on fire after the other gods shun her husband. And we'll look at that story next class. Then Kali and Durga. These are the more fierce, warlike forms of the goddess. So we have Durga. Durga is, well, actually, let's take a little bit of a look at the goddess Durga in action. Durga is one of the more warlike forms of the goddess Parvati. Let's take a look. Oh, sorry, 1 second here. All right, so we're going to look at the goddess Parvati. Let me just set up our sound here. So again, all of this is these are all aspects. These are all manifestations of this feminine energy in the universe that we call the Shakti. Here we go. And we're going to look now at the goddess Durga in action. Okay, so that was an animated depiction of the origins of the goddess Durga. And Durga was made to fight a demon named Mahisha Ashura, said to be made of the energy of the gods. So this demon received a blessing that neither a man, a god, or an animal could kill this demon. But the loophole was there was nothing that said anything about a woman being able to kill, or a goddess being able to kill the demon. So the gods create the goddess Durga with their energy and give the goddess their weapons. Now, the goddess, like many goddesses, is associated with fertility and also said to give kings and warriors the power of conquest. So she was widely worshipped in the age of kingship. The other goddess we have here is Kali. This is the extreme fury of the goddess Parvati. This is a goddess particularly popular among tribal and low caste groups, and a common object of bhakti, or loving devotion. Kali, for her devotees, is seen as a loving mother, but for her enemies, a fierce, deadly goddess. This is Vishnu's wife, Lakshmi, goddess of wealth and fertility, very popular among merchants and farmers. And this is the consort, the wife of the goddess Vishnu. And some say that she comes down with Vishnu as Vishnu's wife whenever Vishnu takes on the form of an avatar. And so there are avatars associated with her as well. Very popular goddess in India. This is the goddess Saraswati. This is a more maternal goddess. She is mentioned in the Vedas, perhaps referencing a river, and associated with wisdom and creativity, said to give the power of speech, eloquent speech, for example, to poets, and associated with art and music. You can see kind of a sitar in her hand. Often students will engage in a practice called a vrata. A vrata is taking a vow to the goddess in exchange for the help of the goddess. For example, "Oh goddess, I will worship you every night for the next 6 months if you help me pass this exam." And then in addition to that, you have many, many village goddesses. Some are associated with sacred stones, trees. Some of these village goddesses are believed to be able to possess certain individuals and give prophecies, warnings, engage in healing. This is an example of the more warlike goddesses. These are the 8 warrior goddesses called the Sapta Matrika, goddesses of the cremation grounds. According to tradition, if one approaches these goddesses, they're very deadly and very dangerous and would devour an individual. However, if they're pleased, they would give individuals magical gifts and magical boons. And finally, in our tour of the goddesses, remember most of the major rivers throughout South Asia, at least according to the Hindus, are forms of the goddess on earth. And this is the Ganges, the most holy, most sacred of rivers, believed to flow from the hair of the god Shiva. And this is a place of bathing, it's a site believed to wash away one's sins in Hinduism. Let's take a little bit of a look at the Ganges River.